Alright, so here are the properties for exponents that we're going to cover. We're going to be covering exponents for pretty much the rest of this week. A lot of this is if you have a lot of practice with it, if you do the assignments, then it should be fairly easy because this really is not that hard. But it is some of this, like, practice makes perfect, so kind of keep that in mind. Our objective today with this one is simplify expressions using different properties of exponents. My BQ for this one is, can you demonstrate each of the properties shown in the video? Or can you come up with the words for the rules? Put them in your own words. Okay, so let's look again. First off, let's go to this and say, okay, don't forget, when you see an exponent is that little bitty number that means repeated multiplication. So like when I say like x to the fourth power, I'm saying x times x times x times x. Again, the little number that's raised up is your exponent or power, because sometimes we'll say x raised to the fourth power. The number in the front is your coefficient still, so that can still be there. And the big number that's down there that the exponent is affecting is your base. Okay. I wanted to make sure we had the coefficients in there too, because sometimes they will play a more important role later on when we start talking about polynomials. So, anyways, and that will be next week. Let's look at the next part. Alright, so let's look at just remembering what an exponent is. You should have already been introduced to this in middle school. But 2 to the third power, again, means 2 times 2 times 2, which would equal 8. So 2 to the third power is 8. 4 to the fourth power would be 4 times 4 times 4 times 4 times 4, repeated 4 times. So again, exponents mean repeated multiplication, which is 256. Remember, this is all stuff like, just like when you learned that multiplication was repeated addition, exponents is repeated multiplication. X to the third is still x times x times x, which is x to the third. By the way, this right here is called expanded form. So when you see it like this, and you hear the word expanded form, that's what that means. Okay, so keep that in mind, because that might be helpful later. Alright, notice here now, the next one says 4x to the third power. The x to the third, the 3 affects only the x. So when I rewrite this in expanded form, it would become 4 times x times x times x times x 3 times. So you would still be 4x to the third power. But notice the difference between that and when I put it in parentheses. Now that means when I say 4x raised to the third power in like 4 parentheses x, or 4x parentheses to the third power like that, however you want to think of it, that means 4 times x times 4 times x times 4 times x, which is 64x to the third power. So a completely different meaning there. So kind of keep that in mind. Just like also this one, negative 2 to the fourth power just means negative 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, which would be negative 16. But if I put that in parentheses, then that means negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2, which would be positive 16. Okay, so sometimes it's one of those, be careful, make sure you read carefully, make sure that you see the way they're written, so that way you can choose the right answer. Because this is one of those with the multiple choice, we could really make sure that there's all sorts of right answers or possible answers because you're not paying attention. Alright, so the first law I'm going to give you for exponents. Law number 1, the power of 1. And by the way, I'm not going to give you any words for this. I want you to put these in your own words. Okay? I might say some things, but I want to see what you put into your own words. So later on, when we go over this, I'm going to have you all create your own definitions, or what you believe are these definitions. We'll see if we go with them. Alright, so the law of the power of 1, let me give you some examples and see what you say to those. So 2 to the first power equals 2, x to the first power, or to the 1 power, equals x. So what could the 1 mean? If I did 3,281 raised to the 1 power, it would be 3,281. If I did negative 5 raised to the 1 power, it would be negative 5. So what do you think could be a definition there? Or what could you say for the power of 1 in your own words? The next law is the power of 0. Power of 0. 0. So the power of 0 says that if I say 2 to the 0 power, my answer is 1. If I say x to the 0 power, my answer is 1. If I say 5,274 raised to the 0 power, my answer is, what do you think it could be? 1. Yay! Okay, I'm sure you got that right? Alright, anyways. So, what would you put into your own words for the power of 0? And hopefully, maybe you got it right. Let's find out. We'll find out later. Alright, negative exponents. Law number 3, negative exponents. Now, this is very important. This is the one that you have to be careful with. Okay, so let's look at this. 2 to the negative 2 is the same thing as saying 1 over 2 squared. Now notice that it was negative, now it is positive. And 2 squared is 4, so really 2 to the negative 2 power is 1 over 4. X to the negative 3 would become, what do you think? 1 over x to the 3rd power. Very good. 5x to the negative 2. I'm sorry, 5 over x to the negative 2. So if you notice something about the negatives, where they went, where do you think this x negative 2 is going to go to become positive? Because your goal is, with negative exponents, you want to make them positive. How do you make them positive? I don't know, but maybe hopefully you're figuring something out that you can write out in your own words. You see what you decided is the power here, or the rule. Okay, let's practice something here. Let's fill in a table. 5 to the 3rd, 5 squared, 5 to the 1st, 5 to the 0, 5 to the negative 1, 5 to the negative 2, and 5 to the negative 3. What are the answers for all of these? 125, 25, 5, 1, 1/5, 1 over 25, and 1 over 125. I'm sure you pause this and let yourself figure that out and fill it in on your own, but you know, just in case. There you go. Now let's look at some simplifying and some examples, and then we'll be pretty much done. Okay, so simplify negative 2 to the negative 4 power. Now remember, that negative is going to become 1 over negative 2. Whoops, I guess I should have said there. That would become 1 over negative 2 raised to the 4th power. And then negative 2 raised to the 4th power is 16. So that should be 1 over 16. 2 raised to the negative 5 power. Negative 2 would become 1 over negative 32, or negative 1 over 32. Because the negative would move the 2 to the 5th power down, and then you'd be saying negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. I think I said that 5 times. I don't know. Alright, let's evaluate. What would happen if I can say, put some numbers inside and kind of go from there. So we're going to imagine here if A is equal to 3 and B is equal to 2. And we're going to do some problem. Oh, I'm sorry, B is equal to 4. I thought it was 2. Well, that's 4. Okay, so A to the 0 power, A to the 0 power, B to the negative 3, which would suggest I have 3 to the 0, and then 4 raised to the negative 3rd power. Well, 3 to the 0 is 1, 4 to the negative 3rd power is 1 over 4 to the 3rd, which is 1 over 64, times 1 would be 1 over 64. Another example, A to the negative 2, B squared. Okay, that would suggest I say 3 raised to the negative 2 power times 4 raised to the 2nd power. Well, 3 to the negative 2 is 1 over 9. 4 squared is 16. And then that times 1/9 is 16 over 9. Again, those shouldn't be very hard, and even do them with a calculator. I don't think it would be anything that difficult, to be honest. Alright, so let's see some problems that you could see on the end of course exam. At least these are very basic. 3 to y to negative 2 would be 3y squared. Negative 4. Okay, k to negative 4. And then I'm going to move that to the top and just become 4k to the 4th. X to the negative 3rd over a to the 0 and times y to the 5th. Well, a to the 0 is just 1, so I don't need that. The x to the negative 3rd is going to move down, so that would leave me x to the 3rd, y to the 5th. Both on the bottom, nothing on top. So what do you think goes up on top? A 1. Very good job. Okay, so that covers everything for today, or at least for this part. You do have some problems you can work on with this. But again, if you have any questions, this is where you feel free to ask, because honestly, this is something that can be very easy, but you've got to make sure you practice with it. All right, thank you very much. Good luck.